Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Orchestry webinar, all around a particular feature set today. We are going to talk about reporting and archiving today. Now, if you've been to some of our previous webinars, you know the frenzy that we've had on trying to go through the whole Orchestry platform. So hopefully the last couple have given you a little bit more of a broader overview of what Orchestry provides. But in this webinar, we are going to specifically talk about the reporting capabilities that Orchestry has. I'm going to show you how we have this really amazing experience reporting around teams and SharePoint sites and permissions and links and a whole bunch of other good stuff there. And then we're also going to talk about archiving, because archiving is a big thing, obviously, that we find lots of customers are having pretty significant challenges with. From a storage perspective, you know that if you are paying Microsoft for storage, it can be a horrific cost to absorb. But the other thing from an archiving perspective as well is lots of customers getting ready for Copilot and trying to archive out a lot of their content. So again, they don't have all of this redundant, outdated, or trivial content that's going to be used by generative AI if they're using Copilot. So we're going to talk about all of those capabilities here in the next 45 minutes. So a little bit about myself. So my name is Michael Pisaric. I am the CEO and janitor, as I call myself, here at Orchestry. I'm also one of the founding team. There is 3 of us just behind me on the top right here. Lots of experience, again, with Microsoft 365, lots of experience with SharePoint Online and Microsoft and SharePoint On-Prem, all of those sorts of pieces as well. If you do have any questions, a couple of things, feel free to use the chat here within this Teams meeting. We'd love to have questions. I will answer them to the best of my ability as I juggle between doing this demo and answering these questions. But also feel free to get in touch with me as well, whether it's through LinkedIn, Twitter, or directly by email. More than happy to answer any of your questions. We're not going to do the hard sell on you. Again, we just want you to make sure that you're getting the most value out of Microsoft 365. And if Orchestry is a part of that, that's even better. If you don't know about us, so we are a automation, governance, and adoption platform for Microsoft 365. What we really want to do is help you, take better advantage of all the capabilities that Microsoft 365 offers. We have a range of capabilities that Orchestry has, which I will talk about. But what we're really trying to do is fill in a lot of the gaps that you might find might be inherent in Microsoft 365. Of course, there's going to be gaps. Microsoft 365 is a massive, massive platform, but we're really trying to build capabilities around Orchestry that are powerful, that are simple, and that are beautiful. And one of the tenets that we have within Orchestry is we're not trying to kind of build the same capabilities that you get out of the box, but just present them nicer. We want to build new capabilities that Microsoft 365 might not necessarily have, or it does have, but you have to go buy an additional license set. You're going to get all of those capabilities together with Orchestry. So why did we build Orchestry? Like, what was the reason? Why were we like, hey, let's start, and create a software product on top of Microsoft 365? Surely Microsoft 365 gives you everything that you need. And what we did was we found there's some pretty common challenges that we found organizations have with Microsoft 365. And again, it's one of the reasons that we have built the Orchestry platform. So again, the kind of lack in visibility and direction. If you're an M365 admin, it's really difficult to understand what is going on. There's multiple different admin centers. It can be really difficult to get a holistic overview of what's going on in Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive and Exchange and all of those pieces. And typically what we heard from a lot of individuals is it's just incredibly difficult as I jump through the different admin centers to try to piece this information together. Luckily, especially in this session around reporting, we do a lot of that for you, where we can actually piece different information from the Microsoft admin center, as well as lots of other information that you can only get through the APIs from Microsoft, and give you a really beautiful, compelling experience. The other thing that we also heard is kind of limited IT resources. I personally think that IT admins and M365 admins are probably the busiest people on earth. If you do have that job, and maybe raise your hand if you do, or just react to this. If you do have that job, it's just a constant flood of like firefighting and people asking for stuff. And, why can't I get into this SharePoint site? Why can't I find this? Where's my document gone? Who deleted this? It's just really difficult. So again, what we're trying to do with Orchestry is not just to provide a tool for you as IT admins to better manage your Microsoft 365 estate, but also empower your end users to do things like provisioning, to do things like archivals, which we'll talk about today. But again, take a little bit of the onus off and put it back onto your content owners in a really simple and powerful, beautiful way to alleviate a lot of the bottlenecks that frequently happens with IT because they've just been inundated with all of these questions. Third thing is around lack of governance. So again, we're seeing a lot around this, particularly with Copilot readiness. I'm not sure if anyone on the call, I'm sure that you are, is working to get ready for Copilot. I really think that Copilot readiness is just a sexier way to talk about Microsoft 365 governance. It's like we've rebranded the set of activities that we're doing because it's trendy now, because everything that is AI is trendy, for instance. But again, it's really difficult to have comprehensive governance across Microsoft 365 from cradle to grave across workspaces using Microsoft 365 out of the box. So what I mean by that is having a consistent process from the creation or the provisioning side to the middle part of actually using these workspaces to then the archiving of these pieces as well. So we'll talk about all of that as well. Next thing is security and compliance. So again, security and compliance could be a whole nother conversation, but in particular where we play a part within Orchestry is much more around things like membership, ownership, and private and sharing links as well. I'm going to show you some capabilities that we're working on in terms of identifying sharing links, anyone links, internal links, guest links, and all of those pieces, again, which can cause information leak and is one of the big things that contributes to oversharing within your tenancy. And the last thing is around AI and Copilot. Again, we talk a lot around this because we're seeing a lot of organizations starting to get ready for Copilot. But again, where do you get started? What do you need to do? What's the first step? Again, we can help you with that as well. So best way to think about Orchestry. So platform built on top of Microsoft 365. Again, we leverage all of the capabilities that Microsoft gives us, as well as add a whole nother bunch of capabilities to it. If you were here in any of our last sessions, we kind of did this and went through like everything in Orchestry. That didn't work very well because there's far too much to go through. So what we are going to talk about today is our intelligent, actionable insights. These are a set of reports that we have that are really going to help you understand your workspaces, your environment, and what you should be doing. Then we're going to talk about governance as well. And the main way we're going to talk about governance is in the concept of what we call life cycle management, which is where this archiving conversation comes in through as well. But there's lots of other features of Orchestry that we can talk about. We're not going to do that. But things like health checks, for instance, actually we'll touch upon health checks a little bit, rich workspace templates, all of that good stuff that we have. Okay, so let's get going because we always run out of time. If you have any questions, feel free to chat as well. A little bit quiet the last couple of sessions. Let's get some questions through. Think of it as free consulting as well for you folks. Feel free to connect with us with all of this sort of stuff. And as again, today's agenda, this is going to be a demo. My 8 minutes of talking without showing a demo has been far too long. So let's get stuck in here. Okay, let me share this. Folks, if you can let me know if you can see something that looks like Teams here, we can get rocking and rolling here. All right, perfect. And yep, I understand for those people that accidentally raised their hands, I don't know who at Microsoft thought it was a good idea to have the raise hand right next to the reaction hand, because I always click on the raise hand by accident and have to put it down and feel weird. So don't feel bad. Okay, let's talk about reporting, right? First of all. So as you know, in Microsoft 365, there's a bunch of various types of admin centers that have a whole range of different info. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you're not familiar with this, there's just a ton of admin centers that we need to do, right? If I want to find things about SharePoint, I got to go to the SharePoint admin center. If I want to find things about Teams, I got to go to the Teams admin center. Maybe I'm interested in terms of security and users and members and all of that sort of stuff. I got to go to this as well. And it can be really difficult just to get a holistic understanding of like what's going on in Microsoft 365, right? How many teams do I have? How many SharePoint sites do I have? Are these things being used or not? What are the SharePoint sharing settings for these particular sites, right? I can kind of go through this, but on the Teams one, like it shows me the members, it shows me the settings, right? But if I want to find information about the SharePoint site for this particular team, now I have to go back to the SharePoint Admin Center, right? And I have to go look at it within here and try to understand what's going on. So even individually, it's problematic. And then if I want some more kind of broad types of reporting as well, maybe I can go to kind of the data access reports. But if I want broad level Microsoft 365 reports, of course, that's not here. I've got to go back to the admin center and go back to reports here, for instance. Now, maybe I want to look at some usage reports and I want to understand, let's say, the use of SharePoint. And then again, this is great, right? But it's kind of really useful information for me to understand maybe on the SharePoint side, how many files have been edited, how many active files. Again, I'm kind of jumping through all of these pieces. And what we find is a lot of organizations, and they're like, okay, I want to know for a team, who's the member of the team, who is the member of the SharePoint sites, how many documents that they have, how much space is used, and how many files are in there. If I want that information, I have to go to 3 different areas, right? And that can become really problematic. You've probably seen that yourself. So how can we help with Orchestry? So let's go to Orchestry. Remember, Orchestry is a Teams app that gets deployed into your environment. There's a bunch of features that we have around provisioning and around our workspace directory. We went through that last time. But what we're going to do is go to our what we call Lifecycle and Insights area. Now, we have a few different ways to show reports within Orchestry, but the main way that we can help you understand what's really happening across your teams, your team sites, your communication sites, and of course your SharePoint sites is through this concept of what we call workspace insights. The entry point to this is this beautiful dashboard. We want to give you a single point, a single kind of pane of glass that you can come in and you can see a holistic overview of your entire environment. Again, whether it's a team site, communication site, even a Viva Engage community through here. On the top right, we have these various tiles, which are going to link to reports, but things like we've got 722 workspaces here, 414 of them haven't been used in more than 30 days. We'll talk about one of our most powerful features, how we track in activity, and some other things around teams with a single channel, or maybe workspaces with guest access enabled. And we'll even give you some historical information and some historical data here. So you can see exactly, how many workspaces you've created maybe over the last 90 days and you've reused and archived. So give you some trends as well through here. One of the most powerful things we do from a reporting perspective, and it's probably the thing that people really like about Orchestry, is this concept of inactivity. It's really difficult for us to understand, if you're an admin, I have a team. Are people actually using this team or not? And what component of the team are they using? Are they just using the team maybe for conversations and they're not touching the SharePoint site? Conversely, are they just using the SharePoint site but not having any conversations? Or maybe they've just created a team and all they're using it for is for a mailbox to put emails into. Again, what I'm going to do is click onto the Orchestry workspace listing, and here I can see all of the workspaces that I have within this environment. And down below here, you can see that we have these counters. Now let me go and find one which is a little bit more interesting here. So I can search for one. Look how beautiful, powerful, look how fast that search experience is. But here's this Orchestry product development research team. I can tell that this is a team through here. I can tell that the template that we used to create this team was product development workspace. I can also tell that this is inactive. Now, how do we do that? Orchestry has a really powerful capability that every night we'll go and look at your teams, your team sites, your SharePoint sites, and we can tell you exactly the last time, let's say for a team, that team's component of that team was used, conversations, reactions, or replies within the channel. We can tell you the last time the mailbox was used within that group for that team. We can tell you the last time the calendar was used, if it was used, and we can also tell you the last time the SharePoint site had activity as well. So again, instead of you having to go to multiple different admin centers, we can bring all of that together and we can help you understand the usage of this overall thing. And that's really powerful because, again, a lot of times you might find in some organizations that you're creating a bunch of teams, but you're just using it for managing documents, for instance, Or you might find, for instance, that you have a bunch of SharePoint sites or a bunch of teams which aren't being used for document management at all. They're just being used for conversations. And what we do with that is we give you an inactivity score, or what we call how many days inactive you are. So it's a really powerful, intelligent way to be able to do this. So of course, what most of our customers do, they go in, they put in Orchestry, they do a sort on days inactive, and this is really where the blood drains out of their face, because they'll find they have teams, team sites, communication sites that haven't been used for days, months, or potentially years. And the way that we do inactivity, let me just go back to this Orchestry product area here. The way that we look at that inactivity as well is fairly holistically. So we can see, again, give you a really good understanding of if these things are active. And for instance, things like SharePoint activity, we look at things if someone's gone and edited a document or uploaded a document and all of those things that you would hope we would do. Now, this is just one type of insight. This isn't the only type of report that we have within Orchestry, obviously. On the top right-hand side, if I click on Workspace Insights, all of these other reports are here ready to go for you. So maybe I'm interested in understanding, do we have any workspaces that have no owners, right? Really common thing that people want to know, right? Ownerless workspaces, as everyone knows, really problematic because you don't actually know who owns it. So here I can click on the ownerless workspace report. I can see we've got a couple of teams, we've got a couple of SharePoint sites through here, but we also give you more information around this. How many members, how many guests, how many documents exist within here, how many pages in the news library, how many list items if you have custom lists, group conversations, channels, usage, and days inactive as well through here. Other types of insights that you might find are really useful. Workspace customizations. I really like this because it shows you, are people actually customizing workspaces? So what I mean by that is, are people adding additional channels? Are they adding additional tabs or lists or libraries or pages, right? It helps you to understand, are people just deploying Teams and SharePoint sites and not using anything else, not using lists, not using extra channels, not using extra tabs? Or are they actually adding these customizations on? And we know with our customers in particular, if you have these really beautiful customized templates for particular business needs, you're going to get much more bang for the buck there as well. Other types of reports. What about user access? I'd be really interested to see, maybe Diego is leaving the organization. Maybe I want to see everything that Diego has access to. Again, I can click on Diego. I can see everywhere where Diego's a member, an owner, or a guest through here. Any Orchestry report as well, folks, can also be exported, right? So we can export any of these. And again, we'll export all of this information and you can do whatever fanciness you want to do with Excel through here. A couple of other reports which I'm going to go through, which I really, really like. The first one is around our workspace activity report. This one is incredibly useful to help you understand, are people actively managing or using SharePoint and document management capabilities in M365. So here I can see how many page views, page visits, how many files have been viewed and edited in the last 30 days. But I think the biggest thing is also, we'll even tell you how many documents exist within these SharePoint sites. And what's powerful about this, and we do it in a bit of a smarter way, we don't just show you the documents in the shared documents library. If you've got other document libraries in there, we're also going to include that within the count, right? So really useful for you to help understand those pieces. And then one of the final ones is around workspace content. So again, no need to do a content audit within Orchestry. We can tell you exactly for every workspace, how many documents, how many pages, how many list items, how many group conversations, workspace usage, all of that sort of stuff as well. A couple of new things as well, which we've just released and we're doing a bunch of work on here. You're also going to find more reports around shared links as well. So again, this is a demo environment, so we don't really have any shared links here. We are going to put them in, folks. But again, imagine being able to understand, well, do we have any ownerless workspaces where someone has recently created some shared links? And we'll show you how many, anyone links and recent organizational links and so forth there are. So lots of good insights. Okay, that's great at the aggregated level. But what if I want to know a little bit more, right? So let's go and find this Orchestry product development research team. Good. I understand it's been inactive, right? That's great. But let's drill down into this and find out more information. So again, for any one of our workspaces, we also have what we call the details of this as well. So I can see exactly when it was created, who it was created by, how much storage has been used, the SharePoint sharing settings, which is really useful, metadata, which we can add as part of this. And through here, I also see a whole range of information in terms of owners, members, guests, channels, all of that sort of stuff. Now, this should be a graph. Again, this is a demo environment, so we're not actively updating this, but this is actually a graph, or these are graphs. They're not straight lines. They should be undulating, I think the word is, but unfortunately we haven't updated these. But this will actually show you how this has changed over time. And it can be incredibly useful to be able to go into the context of a workspace and maybe say, hey, this is growing through the roof. Like, it gives you some of that historical information, which again, you can't get out of the box with M365 unless you're going to run a script every single night and store that information in a database. We're going to do that for you. On the right-hand side, we'll also show you all of the content within that workspace, the SharePoint sites, how many document libraries, how many group mailbox items they have. If they have any planner plans or OneNote notebooks, we'll show you them as well. And the other thing we're also going to show is all of the users. So if we have a bunch of owners, members, or guests as well through here, we'll show you all of those folks as well. So again, really simple, really powerful, really easy to help you understand your environment through here. Now, this is great, but what happens if you're in a position like this? So we go in, we put in Orchestry, and we're like, yep, 84% of your workspaces or a bunch of them haven't been active for more than 30 days. Not really that useful if we can't help you manage the life cycle and manage the archiving of this. But of course, this is something that we can do with Orchestry. Okay, so down the bottom here, you can see we have a current lifecycle status associated with. Oh, we have a question. Tony Graves, can the guest users be synced through Entra? Yes, they can. Actually, Tony, let me show you something. Great segue, Tony. I promise me and Tony didn't set that up. But let me kind of show you one, which is, hang on, let me find you a workspace here. There's one which I'm interested in here. Oh, Talisman. Let's go back here. Workspace here. It's going to be worth it, Tony. I promise here. Talisman, perfect. So yes, they are synced through Entra ID here. If I go to this users tab here, Tony, this one's going to be hopefully a little bit different here because you can see the owners, the members, and the guests as well through here. So these are actually guests, Tony, in Entra ID, which have access to this particular workspace. I kind of find this really neat because this can actually show you much more information about this particular guest in terms of, when it was requested, who was requested by, the last time they logged in as well. But the short answer to your question is yes. And we have a full guest management capability, which we might talk about next time, but we won't go into that. All right, let's go back to the dashboard. So we have a bunch of workspaces, right? How can we now manage all of this stuff? Like, we've got a bunch of crap. It's just there. It hasn't been used for 300 days, 600 days. We had one customer, they had a workspace which hadn't been used for 12 years. I don't even know if Microsoft 365 existed 12 years ago, but it hadn't been used there for a while. So how can we help you manage that content and also archive it? So this is going to be the second part of our little demo here today. Orchestry allows you the ability to add what we call renew or archival policies, which allow you to then manage the life cycle of workspaces within your environment. Down the bottom here, you can see we have this life cycle status. This is a very Orchestry specific thing, which I'll talk about how we implement there. But I'll show you how we can do that as well. Okay. So the way that this gets implemented is through these things, what we call renew or archival policies. This is probably the most powerful feature in Orchestry because it allows you to create policies which you can then retroactively attach to your workspaces to do a cleanup, or maybe proactively attach them as part of template to manage the life cycle of that team site, the communication site, whatever you have in your environment. So let's imagine you want to do a cleanup. You're paying out the nose for Microsoft storage. You got a bunch of crap that people are never going to, use anyway. How could I get Orchestry to help me to go find all of those workspaces which are inactive, go and contact the owners of those workspaces, give them some options. Do you want to archive this stuff Do you want to delete this stuff? Do you want to keep this stuff? And then actually go through a proper archiving process. Because as you know, out of the box in Microsoft 365, there is this new archive feature available now. But all that does is kind of just take stuff, move it into read-only, and it sits there forever. Typically, when you want to archive something, you kind of want to do some more stuff around that, right? Maybe you want to save on storage by removing previous versions. Maybe you want to remove guests, right? Because now that that workspace has been archived, you don't want guests to have access to that. So we can do all of that and much, much more using what we call our renewal and archival policies. But what we're going to do is say, okay, we want to do a cleanup. We want to create a policy here that if we find any team that hasn't been used for 180 days, we want to go and contact the owners and we want to get an approval for what's called an in-place archival. I'll show you how easy it is to set this up. So here's one that we've created before here. So we're going to say for any team that we have, if it hasn't been used for more than 180 days, and again, you've got lots of flexibility here. And of course, we know what that inactivity is because we were just looking at those inactivity metrics. But we're going to say for any team, if it hasn't been active for more than 180 days, the way that we want this policy to execute, and we got lots of options here, maybe you just want to do it. Maybe you just want to do it and let the owners know. But typically, one of the real beautiful things about Orchestry is you can get your content owners involved. Let them make the decision around that content. So you as IT don't make that decision for them because typically you can't. So what we're going to say is when this policy executes, we're going to get an approval. Who is that approval going to be from? So who are my policy stakeholders? Well, in this case, we are going to ask the owners. Now, you could ask the owners, you could ask the members, maybe you ask specific users. But in this case, for every team that we attach this policy to, we're going to ask the team owners. Then what you can also do is put in your own custom notification text. See, all of this stuff can be edited, which is awesome because, again, you can put in instructions relevant to your organization. Now, we've got some pretty basic stuff here. We said, hey, your workspace has been classified as inactive and has been marked for archival. Please review the associated workspace and choose from one of the options below. Now, as everyone knows, no one answers the first of anything these days. People are very strange. I don't answer phone calls anymore. I don't know why. But people typically don't answer the first of anything now anyway. So one of the big issues we find with the Microsoft capabilities or people who are trying to do this manually is like, well, I sent a bunch of notifications to my owners, but no one got back to me. I don't have time to chase these people. Let us do the chasing for you. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say, okay, we're going to send a notification to the owners. We're going to send one notification every day, and we're going to try for 5 amount of times, right? So we can kind of keep pinging the owners. And of course, when someone answers, we're going to stop, but it kind of allows you to do the chasing for them as well. The other thing we can also do with these renewals is allow them to renew the workspace. And these renewals, again, can be based on inactivity. So inactivity is, we say, dynamic. As long as you keep using the workspace, we're not going to ask you again. Or it can be based on what we call extension days. So it can be static. And this is a really interesting option if you work for something like an educational institution where you create a team when the school term starts, and once it ends, it's pretty much done. And again, all of those options are available here within Orchestry for you. Okay, so now we've got a policy. The policy is going to go. It's going to ask our owners, what do you want to do with this? But then the next question is, well, how can we archive content, right? What does that process of archiving mean? Now, again, in out-of-the-box Microsoft 365, there's kind of 3 main ways to archive content. The first one is just using the SharePoint archive feature, or sorry, the Teams archive. You know, that little option next to Teams saying archive team. All that does is it keeps everything as it is. It just makes it read-only. So that's one option. It's essentially, in my mind, kind of useless. No one uses that because it doesn't really do anything. It just makes things read only. You're still getting pinged on storage. Everyone still has access to it, all of those pieces. The other thing you can also do is delete content. No one deletes anything these days. Let's be honest. Like, it's very unlikely that people are going to be like, oh yeah, this site that I've been working on for, X amount of, years, I'm going to delete all of that stuff. So with Orchestry, we've got 2 really powerful ways that we can help you. The first is what's called an archive in place. Think of an archive in place as a much more powerful version of that Teams archive function where you're going to keep the content where it is. So you're going to keep the group, keep the team, keep the SharePoint site where it is. But with Orchestry, you can now perform a series of what we call archival actions. So you can build your own archival process for this team, workspace, and group and have Orchestry execute on it. So what are some of the things that I might want to do as part of an archive? Well, of course, this is a team. So let's set the team status to archive. That makes sense. And that's basically the only thing you can do out of the box in M365. We can also even allow you to export those channel posts to Excel. Can be really useful, right? From a compliance perspective. On the SharePoint side, a couple of really powerful options. We can set the SharePoint site to read only. But a new option that we have in here where we think is incredibly useful is you can even say, well, once this workspace gets archived, remove the site from Microsoft Copilot processing, right? So you have this capability now to control that. You can even associate this with a hub. So maybe you want to have an archival hub through here, and we're going to say, okay, every time someone goes and archives something, we haven't got a hub here, we can automatically join that SharePoint site to a hub. What are some of the other things that we might want to do when we archive something? Well, I think it's super useful to maybe change the name of the team or the group or the SharePoint site here. So we can even change the name of that. So when someone says, yes, I want to archive this, we're going to put archived and today's date in front of it as well. So again, these are all things we would like to do. No one's doing this manually because it's too painful. Of course, Orchestry can do it all for you. But there's two things I think which really we've heard from customers time and time again, and we know our customers are using this. The first thing is, as part of an Orchestry archival process, you can now do things like remove previous versions of content. So again, the out-of-the-box Microsoft capabilities don't allow you to do that. Even if you use the SharePoint archive feature, you keep all of these old versions. And as you know, by default, Microsoft, when you provision a team or a SharePoint site, it's going to store the most recent 500 versions of content. And in our experience, for most customers, roughly 70 to 95% of data storage is old versions of stuff that you might not necessarily need, particularly if you want to archive this content. So with Orchestra, you can say, okay, when someone archives this, we're just going to archive the most current version. So what we'll do is we'll strip out all of those previous versions, dump them into the recycle bin, and you're going to save on all of that storage. So incredibly useful. And again, lots of flexibility here. You might not want to process all of the libraries. Maybe you just want to choose individual libraries that you process. Lots of flexibility here, lots of features. The other thing that we also want to do as part of an archival, particularly from a security perspective, particularly if you're trying to get ready for Copilot, is changing permissions. Right? You might not want the same people to have access to this content long-term once it's been archived, particularly for guests, right? You might not want your guest users to have access to a project they worked on 4 years ago with your organization now that that project is finished. So again, with Orchestry, we give you that ability to say, okay, when we do the archival, we're going to remove access for the members, we're going to remove access for the guests here, and we're going to change the ownership here to, let's say, the project managers, because a lot of these we know are going to be projects that we archive. We'll even give you the ability to extract this permission configuration right through here, so you can know historically what's gone back in time. So that's awesome. And lots of integration points within Orchestry as well. So you can do things like, well, once we archive this team, send a webhook to somewhere else to apply a retention label, or maybe go to a third-party system and move it over. All of that stuff you can do as well. So that's the first way that we allow you to archive. It's kind of keeping that content in place. And this is a really useful way we find for organizations which are doing kind of archiving of content, which they know they might need within the future. The other way, though, which we do, and this is something that Microsoft 365 doesn't do, is this idea that you can now archive content to a particular area. So let's imagine you're doing a massive cleanup of Teams and SharePoint. What you want to then do is say, for all of these Teams and SharePoint sites, right? Once someone clicks on archive, what we want to do is we don't want to keep the team and we don't want to keep the group, but we do want to keep all of the content. We want to move all of the content to a central area. In this case, we're going to call it the project archives area. We're going to create a folder that represented each team. And look how nice this is. We'll extract all of those Teams messages for you. We'll extract all of those permissions for you. Any lists that you had there as well, we'll extract all of those as Excel files. But the best thing, of course, is we'll move all of the documents, right? So whether it's a custom library, like we have one here called project documents, or the actual documents library or the shared documents library through here. We'll move all of that over for you, and we'll even extract the metadata before we do the archival. So you can kind of see, again, all of the craziness and metadata and everything else that you had through here. The reason that this option is really powerful is this is a great way to do a cleanup, because we know with a lot of customers, they're like, well, we have a bunch of teams and SharePoint sites, right? We don't need to keep all of these groups and all of these teams. So let's do a cleanup for the majority of them and move them into kind of a central archived area. Just take the latest version of that content, save on all of that storage, get rid of all of these old teams and SharePoint sites and all of that cluttering to make place. The other thing we can also do is combine these. So I know I'm going through a lot of functionality here, folks, but we can combine these together with two-step. So we can say, okay, we're going to do an archive in place here. So we're going to keep everything where it is, and then maybe add a second step that after a year, then we're going to move it to a central project archive. And then after that, you can move it to something like Azure cold storage or any of those other capabilities. So lots and lots of flexibility here. So how does this work, and how does this look like for our end users? Like, it's great that we can set these policies up, but what would this look like for our end users through here? So here we have a workspace that we've created previously. Again, lots of information through here. We have an archival policy here as well. So I'm just going to force the archival of this and kind of talk to you what happens. So every night, Orchestry is going to go in. It's going to look at all of your workspaces that you have. It's going to calculate the inactivity. And then what it's also going to do is look at any policies that are applied to this particular workspace through here. Once that policy fires, then depending on the status, or depending on what's going to happen, that policy is going to fire. Now, in this case, what's happened is there's no approvals in this. So this is just going to, this particular workspace is ready to archive. If we find a workspace that has a policy which has an approval on it, so let me go here. And if you can't tell, that was my original intention of this. I clicked on the wrong policy. Hopefully I talked around it enough so no one noticed, but let's see how we're going. Okay, this one is. So again, this time this policy is going to fire. It's going to be a little bit of a different here, because you notice now what's going to happen is that here, now the status of this workspace has changed from active to pending approval. Now, why is that? Remember, we had that approval process associated with it. Since I'm an owner of this particular workspace, if I click on users, I can see that I'm an owner. So I'm playing Archie here. Archie is our French Bulldog, or my French Bulldog, by the way. Let's imagine that I'm Archie. I'm working within Teams. I'm going to get a notification, but I also get, so I'm going to get an email, but I also get this beautiful notification directly within Teams. And I can come here and say, okay, it's classified as inactive. I don't need this anymore. Click on archive, click on submit. That's all I have to do. That's how we can empower your content owners to make this decision around their content. Because again, I just did an archival of one workspace, but of course you can apply this to every single workspace, every single team that you have within your organization through here. So now that I've approved this, the status of this is going to change from pending approval to ready to archive through here also. If I now go to this particular, if I now go to this particular workspace through here, again, I can see exactly the status that it's ready to archive. So this is going to be archived in just a moment. And if I click on the Lifecycle tab, we also do a really good job to help you understand what happened. Now, again, it all looks a bit hokey because it's me doing it here, but I can see here, we forced the workspace to archive. We sent a notification out, right? Someone basically went back. So Archie said, yep, I don't need this anymore. And the status change is now ready to archive, and it's going to get archived in a couple of minutes here. So everything is logged through here as well. But again, if I go back to the Orchestry app here, the beauty of this is you can do this for one workspace, or you can do this for every single workspace that you have. So I can come in and say, show me all of the teams where the status is inactive, for instance, through here. We've got 352 of those. Let's select these. Let's assign a policy through here, right? And then let's click on, let's archive this to leave in place. Really beautiful experience, right? I can go and assign these through here. I'm not going to do that now. And then again, once these things tick over to 180 days inactivity, right? Orchestry is going to do those notifications for you. Your users can answer them, and all of this just works. And it means for you as an admin now, I can go back to my workspace dashboard, and once I have all of these policies attached, I can see exactly what's going on in my environment. So we have 114 workspaces which are active. We have a bunch which are inactive. We have 185 which are pending approval. So we've sent these notifications out to people, but no one's gotten back to us, right? Now, not that common, far more common in a demo environment because we're not actively actioning these. I can also see how many workspaces were renewed, which is really interesting. So I can see exactly when they were renewed and who they were renewed by. So again, if I click into here, you can see we have that complete life cycle, when the last time the renewal happened and when the last time the activity happened through here. But the final thing as well is if I go back to my dashboard, I can also click on any workspaces that we've archived. And we'll give you a really good understanding in terms of how it was archived, who was archived by, and what that process was as well. So I can see here for this Jacko project, for instance, if I click on lifecycle, again, I can see exactly how it was archived, who was archived by, and what that process is. And we'll even give you a full overview of exactly kind of what's happened and all of the steps that we've gone through. But what it means is that you can put in Orchestry, understand your workspaces, understand the inactivity, and you might say, okay, we've identified 2,000 workspaces, which we know are inactive. Let's save on a bunch of storage. All we then need to do is go add these policies. Again, you can create them. They can be different for teams and team sites and all of those pieces. Add these policies, allow your users to make the decisions around that. And then what you'll find is that your growth of content storage is going to be reduced because, again, if we're archiving and removing all of these previous versions, a ton of storage savings there. And also from a security and a Copilot readiness perspective, you can do things like remove access for guests, remove access for members, or even remove this from Copilot processing altogether. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea in terms of how we can combine these things. It is one of my favorite features. I really like this renew or archival policies because it's super flexible. We didn't get down into all of the nitty gritty through here. But listen, folks, just something as simple as proactively getting people to understand that they're owners of content, so this should do something about it, is incredibly, incredibly useful. And again, it's a really beautiful experience. Hey, I'm an owner. I'll get this notification. Yep. I still need this. I can just click on renew and submit, right? It gives you that ability now, especially at scale, to give some of the responsibility to your workspace owners, as well as making sure that we also have all of that governance in place for them, both short-term and long-term as well. All right, let me go back here. Oh, we're right on time. Perfect. Let me present this presentation back here. If anyone's got any questions, let us know through here. Okay, couple of things really quickly, which we'll just go through here as well. Today's poll, we do have a poll for today. Love for you folks to fill it in if you are interested here as well. Now, what happens if you want to get started with Orchestry, right? Reach out to us. We have full 28-day functional trials. You get all of the capabilities as well as much more that I've shown you here today. So if you are interested in kind of putting in Orchestry, understanding your environment, maybe doing some archiving, super easy to get started. Just go to orchestry.com and request a demo or start a trial or get in touch with us at hello.orchestry. And then also, we don't just give you a demo because that's kind of, a little bit, it's good, but we want to do better than that Orchestry. So we can even take you through a full 28-day managed evaluation through here. So again, where you actually sit down with one of our team, it's all free cost, and go through that process. Awesome. Hans or Haynes, if I'm butchering your name, I'm sorry. Where's the archive located? So you've got options here. It's either going to be located within your SharePoint environment, but you can also move it to other areas also. So Azure, Azure storage, Azure blob storage is the most common one, but you do have choices in terms of how you do that as well. In terms of how Orchestry is built and architected, it's all built on Azure. It's all built within the Microsoft 365 environment, because again, we have such a close coupling there. Perfect. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. I hope this was useful. I know we went through a lot. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of an overview of some of the power around Orchestry. Really, if you are interested at all, reach out to us. We won't do the hard sell on you, but particularly now going into the second half of the year, understand your environment, use the archiving capabilities, get rid of all of that old crap that you just don't need, right? People don't need 500 versions of a document from 6 years ago. It just doesn't work like that. So give it a go, give it a trial. We're more than welcome to happy. And then I think it's Jensen, pre-recorded sessions or documentation of full functionality. Yes, there are. Yep. So we can send that out to you here, Jensen. Jess, if you want to send that out to Jensen. We've also got a full knowledge base and a full help desk as well, Jensen, which goes into excruciating detail in terms of all of the functionality that we have. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Quick 45 minutes. Hopefully it was useful. And we will see you next time for our next Orchestry webinar. I think we're going to do some stuff around guests next time as well. So if you're interested in that, feel free to join as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.